9,999 rooms. That is the number you will find in almost every travel guide, every documentary, every article about the Forbidden City in Beijing. 9,999. One room fewer than the 10,000 rooms of the Jade Emperor's celestial palace. Because no earthly ruler would dare to equal heaven. It is a beautiful story, and it is not true. Modern surveys count 8,886 rooms across 980 surviving buildings. Not 9,999. Close, but not quite. And yet the myth refuses to die, because in the Forbidden City, the myth is sometimes more important than the measurement. But the real numbers are extraordinary enough. 720,000 square meters. That is nearly 100 football fields, 4 times the size of Buckingham Palace, larger than the entire Vatican City, over 1 million workers, more than the entire population of 15th century London, multiplied by 20. "14 years of construction. The Empire State Building took 410 days. The Forbidden City took over 5,000. And when it was finished, it could survive an earthquake stronger than any ever recorded on Earth. This is the story of the largest palace complex ever built. A palace designed as a map of the universe. A palace where every color was a law, where every number was a prayer, and where some of the darkest chapters in Chinese history played out behind golden doors that no outsider was ever meant to open. The story begins not with an architect or an emperor. It begins with a man who was never supposed to be either. His name was Zhu Di, pronounced Judy. And in 1402, he did something that Chinese political tradition considered unforgivable. He overthrew his own nephew. The Jianwen Emperor had been the rightful heir, crowned by their grandfather, the founder of the Ming dynasty. But Zhu Di, the Prince of Yan, the uncle, wanted the throne, and he took it by force. The civil war lasted 3 years. It was called the Jingnan Campaign. When it was over, the imperial palace in Nanjing was in flames. The Jianwen Emperor had vanished. His body was never found. Some historians believe he died in the fire. Others believe he escaped by disguising himself as a Buddhist monk. The mystery has never been solved. Zhu Di sat on the throne, and his first problem was not military. It was political. Nanjing was the old capital, filled with Confucian scholars who had supported the legitimate emperor, filled with bureaucrats who viewed Zhu Di as a usurper, filled with ghosts. So he made a decision that would reshape the map of China. He would move the capital north to Beijing, to his territory, his military base, the city where he had been the Prince of Yan. And there, he would build a palace so vast, so magnificent, so perfectly aligned with heaven, that no one would ever question his right to rule. In 1406, the decree went out. The Ministry of Works was commanded to begin construction. The team assembled was extraordinary. China's finest master carpenters and stonemasons were summoned from across the empire. But the most surprising member of the team was not Chinese at all. His name was Nguyen An, a Vietnamese man, born in 1381. Captured during the Ming invasion of Vietnam in 1407, castrated, made a eunuch in the Ming court. But Nguyen An was also an architect of extraordinary talent, a specialist in both construction and hydraulic engineering. The Yongle Emperor recognized his genius and appointed him to help design and supervise the construction of the most important building in the Chinese Empire. Think about that for a moment. The most Chinese building in the world, a palace that would define Chinese civilization for 6 centuries, was partly designed by a Vietnamese prisoner of war who had been forcibly brought to China. He was neither free nor Chinese, and he helped create the symbol of Chinese imperial power. Over 1 million workers were mobilized. 100,000 skilled artisans, carpenters, stonemasons, tile makers, painters, lacquer workers, bronze casters. They came from across the empire. Many did not come willingly. And the first problem they faced was not design, it was materials. Because the site chosen for the palace, the flat plains of Beijing, had almost none of the raw materials needed to build it. The wood was 1,000 miles to the south. The stone was 70 kilometers to the north. The bricks were in Suzhou, over 1,000 kilometers away. Everything had to be brought to Beijing, and some of those journeys would take longer than the construction itself. Consider the columns. The Hall of Supreme Harmony, pronounced Tai He Dian, is the largest building in the Forbidden City, the ceremonial heart of the entire complex. Every coronation, every imperial birthday, every New Year's Day ceremony happened here. It stands on a 3-tiered platform of white marble. Inside, 72 massive columns support the roof. 6 of them, the ones nearest the dragon throne, are wrapped in golden dragons. When the hall was first built, each column was about 1 meter in diameter. Each was carved from a single trunk of nanmu wood, Phoebe Zhenan. One of the most precious timbers in the world. Dense, fragrant, naturally resistant to insects and rot. The current columns are pine, replaced after fire during the Qing dynasty, because by then, centuries of imperial construction had depleted the nanmu forests entirely. But the original engineering ambition, one tree, one column, tells you everything about how this palace was built. Nanmu does not grow anywhere near Beijing. The trees were found in the jungles of Yunnan and Sichuan in southwestern China, over 1,500 kilometers away. Cutting them was dangerous. The jungles were remote, humid, and full of disease. But transporting them was worse. The logs were floated down rivers, hundreds of kilometers of river systems, navigating rapids, gorges, and seasonal flooding. The journey from jungle to Beijing could take up to 4 years. 4 years for a single piece of wood. To put that in perspective, it took Columbus less than 3 months to cross the Atlantic. A nanmu log needed 4 years to reach Beijing. Not because the distance was greater, because the logistics were harder. Now consider the stones. The largest carved marble slabs in the Forbidden City weigh over 220 tons. Some originally weighed over 330 tons before centuries of erosion. That is heavier than a Boeing 747. The quarries were located about 70 kilometers north of Beijing. 70 kilometers does not sound far. But in the 15th century, there was no vehicle on Earth that could carry 200 tons. Chinese wheeled carts of that era had a maximum capacity of about 90 tons. So the engineers invented something remarkable: ice roads. During the winter months, workers dug wells every half mile along the route from the quarry to the palace. They poured water onto the frozen ground, creating a slick, continuous surface of lubricated ice. Then, they placed the marble blocks on wooden sledges and slid them across the ice. In 2013, researchers from the University of Science and Technology Beijing published a study that quantified the method. On bare ground, moving a 123-ton stone required more than 1,500 men. On a lubricated ice road, the same stone could be moved by fewer than 50. The ice road reduced the needed workforce by a factor of more than 30. 3,000 years earlier, Egyptian workers had faced a similar problem: how to move impossibly heavy stones with no machinery. Their solution was similar in principle. They poured water on sand to reduce friction in front of their sledges, pulling limestone blocks to the pyramids. Water on sand in the desert. Water on ice in northern China. Neither civilization knew the other's method. Both discovered the same physics. And then there were the bricks. Not ordinary bricks, golden bricks. The floors of the Forbidden City's greatest halls, the Hall of Supreme Harmony, the hall of central harmony, the hall of preserving harmony, are paved with a special brick made only in one place on earth. Lumu town, north of Suzhou, over 1,000 kilometers south of Beijing. The soil there is a particular yellow clay, uniquely suited for a brick-making process so elaborate that it borders on alchemy. The production of a single batch of golden bricks took between 12 and 24 months. First, the clay was selected, refined, and purified through more than 20 individual steps. Then the bricks were shaped and left to dry in the shade for 6 to 8 months, not in the sun, in the shade. Then came the firing, 130 days in the kiln, not 130 hours, 130 days. The fuel was changed in stages. Rice chaff first, then small firewood, then pine wood. Each fuel burned at a different temperature, slowly transforming the clay through a carefully controlled thermal sequence. When the bricks were finished, they were dense, incredibly hard, and produced a clear metallic ring when struck. Their surfaces were smooth enough to reflect a golden color, which is one theory for how they got their name. Another theory is that the name evolved from Jing Juan, capital brick, because they were made exclusively for the capital. A single floor brick took longer to produce than it takes to build an entire modern house. And here is something that sounds modern, but was 600 years old. Quality control. Like the Great Wall's Ming Dynasty bricks, the golden bricks could be traced. If a brick failed, if it cracked, if it did not ring true, if its color was uneven, the kiln, the maker, and the supervising official could be identified and punished. This was an industrial quality assurance system centuries before the concept existed in Western manufacturing. The wood traveled 1,500 kilometers by river. The stone traveled 70 kilometers on ice. The bricks traveled 1,000 kilometers by canal. Every material in the Forbidden City tells a story of distance, labor, and obsession. But the real genius was not in the materials, it was in how they were assembled. The Forbidden City has survived over 200 major earthquakes in 600 years. 200. Including the Tangshan earthquake of 1976. Magnitude 7.8. One of the deadliest earthquakes in recorded history. Over 200,000 people died. The epicenter was just 150 kilometers from the Forbidden City. The surrounding modern buildings, concrete, steel, 20th century engineering, suffered catastrophic damage. The 600-year-old wooden palace was fine. How? The answer is in the joints. In medieval Europe, architects solved the problem of supporting heavy stone roofs by inventing the flying buttress. Massive external stone arms, that transferred the lateral thrust of vaulted ceilings down to the ground. The principle was rigidity. The building resists the forces acting upon it. Stone against gravity, mass against motion. It works. Gothic cathedrals are magnificent, but they crack in earthquakes. In China, the engineers took the opposite approach. They invented the dougong, pronounced dougong. Dougong are interlocking wooden bracket sets. Dozens, sometimes hundreds per building, each one composed of multiple pieces of carved wood that fit together without a single nail. They sit between the columns and the roof, distributing the enormous weight of heavy ceramic tile roofs across the entire timber frame. But here is what makes them extraordinary. During an earthquake, each piece of the dougong can move independently. They shift, they slide, they absorb the seismic energy through friction between the components. Instead of resisting the force, they dissipate it. The building does not fight the earthquake, it dances with it. Below the dougong, the columns connect to the beams using mortise and tenon joints. No nails, no bolts, no screws. Just precisely carved wood, fitting into precisely carved wood. Under seismic stress, these joints allow the frame to sway, to flex, to deform slightly, and then return to its original position, like a car's shock absorbers, except these were engineered 600 years ago. And there is one more detail that surprised modern structural engineers. The walls of the Forbidden City are not load-bearing. In Western architecture, walls hold up the building. Remove a wall, and the structure above it collapses. In the Forbidden City, the walls carry zero structural weight. The entire load, the roof, the tiles, the ornamental ridges, is carried by the timber frame, the columns, the beams, and the dougong. The walls are just screens. Remove every wall, and the roof still stands. In 2017, engineers at a Chinese university built a 1:5 scale model of a Forbidden City structure. They placed it on a shake table, a platform that simulates earthquake motion. They tested it at magnitude 4. It stood, magnitude 6. It stood, magnitude 7.8. The Tangshan earthquake. It stood. Magnitude 9.0. It swayed, it flexed, and it stood. They pushed it to magnitude 10.1. The strongest earthquake ever recorded on Earth was 9.5 in Chile in 1960. Magnitude 10.1 is beyond anything in human experience. The wooden structure survived. The stone base shifted, but the building did not collapse. a 600-year-old design that can survive forces no building on Earth has ever experienced. But the engineers of the Forbidden City did not only prepare for earthquakes, they prepared for water. Beneath the palace, hidden from public view, is one of the most sophisticated drainage systems in the ancient world. Over 15 kilometers of rain ditches, 13 of them underground. They follow the natural slope of the terrain, which descends 1.22 meters from north to south. Rainwater flows from rooftop to courtyard, to gutter, to underground channel, to the inner Golden Water River, the artificial canal that curves through the palace complex, and finally into the 52-meter wide moat. On the triple marble platform of the three great halls, there are 1,142 intricately carved dragon head spouts. During a heavy rainstorm, water erupts from all of them simultaneously, sheets of water arcing through the air from every direction. The Chinese call it 10,000 dragons spitting water. The entire complex can drain its surface of floodwater in approximately 20 minutes, faster than most modern parking lots. And for the threat they could not engineer away, fire, the palace maintained 308 large bronze water tanks, strategically placed throughout the complex, each one holding roughly 2 tons of water. In winter, fires were lit beneath the tanks to stop the water from freezing. 70 wells supplemented the supply. A dedicated fire squad of 100 men stood ready at all times. The Forbidden City was not just built, it was defended. Against earthquakes by flexibility, against water by hidden rivers, against fire by bronze reservoirs. Every system was designed to be invisible. You could walk through the Forbidden City and never notice the drainage channels beneath your feet, the shock absorbers above your head, or the firefighting tanks beside the walls. The engineering that keeps this palace standing is the engineering you cannot see. But there is another invisible system in the Forbidden City, one that has nothing to do with physics. It is the system of symbols. And it was designed to do something no amount of structural engineering can achieve. It was designed to make you believe that the man sitting on the throne was chosen by heaven itself. In Chinese, the Forbidden City is called Zijincheng, pronounced Zijincheng. 3 characters, each one a key to understanding the entire palace. Z means purple, not the purple of the walls, they are red. Not the purple of the roofs, they are yellow. Purple refers to Ziwei Yuan, the Purple Palace, the constellation that surrounds the North Star. In Chinese astronomy, the North Star is the fixed point around which the entire sky revolves. It is the cosmic center, and the constellation around it is the celestial emperor's court. So Z, purple, means the emperor's authority comes from the stars. Jin means forbidden. Unauthorized entry was punishable by death, not metaphorically. Literally, Qing means city, Zijincheng, the purple forbidden city, the celestial palace brought down to earth, closed to the world, and designed to make one man the center of all things. Now walk through it and watch how the design reinforces this idea at every step. The entire complex lies on a north-south axis. A perfectly straight line running from the Meridian Gate in the south to the Gate of Divine Might in the north. This axis extends beyond the palace into the city of Beijing itself. The most important buildings face south. In Chinese cosmology, south is the direction of the sun, of warmth, of positive energy, yang. North is the direction of cold, of darkness, of yin. The emperor sat on his throne facing south. With the celestial north, the North Star, at his back, the sun before him, the cosmos behind him. He is literally positioned at the intersection of heaven and earth. The layout is bilaterally symmetrical. Every building on the east has a mirror on the west. This is not decoration. It is yin and yang, balance, harmony, the cosmic order made visible in brick and timber. The complex is divided into two distinct zones. The outer court in the southern half is yang, open, public, ceremonial. The great halls of state, where coronations, military reviews, and imperial examinations took place. The inner court, in the northern half, is yin, enclosed, private, domestic. The emperor's personal quarters, the empress's chambers, the concubines' residences, the gardens. Yang is public, yin is intimate, and the architecture embodies the boundary between them. Now look at the colors. In the Forbidden City, color is not aesthetics. Color is law. Yellow, the color of the roof tiles on almost every major building, was reserved exclusively for the emperor. In Chinese philosophy, 5 elements govern the natural world: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. Each element has a color, a direction, and a meaning. Yellow belongs to earth, and earth sits at the center of the compass. The emperor is the center. Only the emperor may use yellow. If a prince used yellow tiles on his residence, it was not a poor design choice. It was a death sentence. Red, the color of the walls, the columns, the window frames, represents fire, prosperity, and power. It is the color of the state. Green and blue are for subordinate buildings. Black and grey for servants' quarters. The Forbidden City is a color-coded hierarchy. You can read the rank of a building from its paint. In European palaces, Versailles, Buckingham, the Winter Palace, color was a matter of taste and available materials. White marble because it was elegant. Gold because it was expensive. In the Forbidden City, color was a command structure, a visual language of obedience. And then there is the number 9. 9 in Chinese, Ju, sounds identical to the word for eternity. Also Ju, it is the highest single digit. The ultimate Yang number, the number of the emperor. Count the doornails on the gates of the Forbidden City. 81. 9 rows of 9. Count the roof ornaments on the Hall of Supreme Harmony. 10. The only building in China with 10. Because it is the only building in China that belongs to the Son of Heaven. Every other imperial building has 9. Even the alleged 9,999 rooms follow this logic. One room short of the divine 10,000. Because no mortal palace may equal heaven's. The myth is factually wrong, but symbolically, it could not be more right. The Forbidden City operates on 2 levels simultaneously. On one level, it is a physical space. Buildings, courtyards, walls, rivers. On another level, it is a cosmological diagram. A 3-dimensional argument that the man at its center is not merely a ruler. He is the axis around which the universe turns. Every brick reinforces this. Every tile declares it. Every golden doornail arranged in perfect rows of 9 whispers it to anyone who knows how to count. In France, Louis XIV built Versailles to be seen. Open gardens, hall of mirrors, a palace that said, "Look at me." In China, the Yongle Emperor built the Forbidden City to be hidden. High walls, deep moats. A palace that said, "You are not worthy of looking." Both were saying the same thing. I am the center of the world. But they said it in opposite ways. One through display, one through denial. The difference tells you something important. Not about palaces, about civilizations, and behind the golden doors of the inner court, in the rooms no outsider was ever meant to enter, the Forbidden City held truths that the cosmological code was designed to conceal. Because the man at the center of the universe was also a man. And some of the things that happened inside these walls would take 600 years to reach the outside world. In 1421, just months after the Forbidden City was officially inaugurated, something happened inside its walls that would be erased from Chinese history for centuries. A concubine, one of the emperor's favorites, died. The details of her death are disputed. Some accounts say suicide, some say natural causes. Some say it was related to an affair with a eunuch. Some whisper that the entire scandal began with rumors about the emperor himself. What happened next is not disputed. The Yongle emperor ordered a massacre. Approximately 2,800 women of the imperial harem were executed. By slicing, one of the cruelest forms of execution in Chinese penal history. Among them were girls as young as 12. This event does not appear in the official Chinese records of the Yongle reign. It was edited out, erased from the imperial narrative. The only reason we know about it at all is because of one woman, Lady Kui. She was a Korean concubine sent to the Ming court as part of a diplomatic arrangement between the Joseon dynasty of Korea and the Ming Empire. She survived the massacre. Her testimony was preserved, not in Chinese archives, but in the Joseon annals. The court records of the Korean kingdom. In those records, she described what she witnessed, the scale, the cruelty, the ages of some of the victims. 3 years later, in 1424, the Yongle emperor died, and Lady Kui's survival ended. She was among 16 concubines selected for Shunzang, ritual death, the practice of requiring concubines to follow the emperor into the afterlife. According to the Joseon records, the women were brought to a hall. Ropes were hung from the ceiling. Small wooden platforms were placed beneath each rope. They were instructed to stand on the platforms. The nooses were placed around their necks, and the platforms were kicked away. Lady Kui's last recorded words, translated from the Korean archive, were directed at a companion. A farewell, spoken to another Korean concubine, before the platform was removed. Shunzang was not unique to the Yongle court. It had been practiced in various forms across centuries of Chinese imperial history, and it would continue into the mid-Ming dynasty before being abolished. But the combination, a mass execution followed by forced ritual suicide of survivors, reveals something about the Forbidden City that its architecture was designed to hide. The palace was not only the most beautiful building in the empire, it was the most dangerous. The maze-like layout of the inner court was not just aesthetically pleasing. It was a surveillance architecture, thousands of small courtyards, connected by narrow passages, separated by high walls, each section isolated from the next. Communication between quarters was controlled, movement was monitored. The Forbidden City was a machine of control, a place where fear regulated behavior at every level. Even senior ministers approached with terror. Entering restricted areas without authorization was a capital offense. Over the 5 centuries of imperial occupation, an estimated 70,000 eunuchs served within these walls. Some had been castrated involuntarily as prisoners of war. Others had done it to themselves, voluntarily, because service in the Forbidden City was one of the only paths to power for men born into poverty. The trade was flesh for influence. The currency was absolute loyalty. Here is what the Forbidden City's cosmic architecture does not tell you. The man at the center of the universe was also a man surrounded by people whose entire existence depended on his mood, whose fates were determined by rumors, suspicions, jealousies, and whispered accusations. The golden doors hid a world of extraordinary precariousness, where beauty masked brutality, where order masked paranoia, where the most powerful man in the empire could, in a single night, order the deaths of nearly 3,000 people and have the record of it erased. Until a foreign concubine's testimony survived in a foreign archive. The building endured. The truth took longer. In 1644, rebel forces under Li Zijincheng, pronounced Li Zuchong, stormed Beijing. They captured the Forbidden City. They set fire to parts of it. The Ming dynasty was over. The Qing dynasty, the Manchus, took the palace next. They repaired it. They redecorated it. They continued the traditions for another 268 years. And then, in 1912, the last dynasty fell. The last emperor of China was a child named Puyi, pronounced Puyi. He had been crowned at the age of 2. After the fall of the Qing dynasty, Puyi was allowed to remain in the inner court, a phantom emperor in a country that no longer had an emperor. In 1924, he was finally expelled. He walked out through the Meridian Gate, the same gate that had symbolized the entry into heaven for 24 emperors, the same gate through which no commoner had been permitted to pass. He was 28 years old. The only home he had ever known was closing behind him. The massive red doors swung shut on 500 years of imperial history. But 1 year later, those doors opened again. Not for an emperor, for everyone. In 1925, the Forbidden City became the Palace Museum. For the first time in 500 years, ordinary people could walk through the Meridian Gate, could stand in the Hall of Supreme Harmony, could see the Dragon Throne, could walk the same corridors where emperors had walked, concubines had lived, and eunuchs had schemed. Today, over 19 million people visit the Forbidden City every year, more than the populations of Norway, New Zealand, and Ireland combined. Its estimated market value is $70 billion, making it the most valuable palace and the most valuable piece of real estate on Earth. The Palace Museum houses over 1.8 million cultural relics. Paintings, ceramics, jade carvings, calligraphy, imperial clothing, bronze vessels. 5 millennia of Chinese artistic achievement collected by 24 dynasties. But the building itself is the greatest artifact, the largest collection of preserved ancient wooden structures in the world. A UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1987, and it is not in perfect condition. Only about 8% of the Ming dynasty structures are considered well preserved. The rest are in various stages of decay, erosion from wind and rain, damage from the sheer volume of tourism, 40,000 visitors on an average day. In some rural sections, local residents have taken bricks from the walls to build their own houses. 600-year-old bricks repurposed as garden walls and pig pens. A 16-year restoration project, concluding around 2020, aimed to restore all buildings to their pre-1911 state and increase public access to 80% of the palace. But here is what makes the Forbidden City's survival different from the ruins of Europe. In Europe, ancient monuments are preserved as they are. Crumbling, weathered, frozen in time. The Colosseum is beautiful precisely because it is broken. In China, heritage is preserved through continuous renewal. A building is not considered lost if it has been rebuilt. It is considered alive. The Hall of Supreme Harmony has burned down and been rebuilt multiple times. The current structure dates to the Kangxi Emperor's reign in the early 18th century, 300 years after the original. But it is still called the same hall. It still serves the same function in the same position on the same axis. The building changes, the meaning endures. This is a fundamentally different philosophy of preservation, neither better nor worse than the Western approach, but profoundly different. The West preserves the object, China preserves the idea. And this difference, this willingness to rebuild, to renew, to maintain the living continuity of a structure rather than its frozen form, may be the reason the Forbidden City still stands at all. Not as a ruin, not as a monument to a dead civilization, but as a living museum in a living city, visited by more people every year than any palace on Earth. If you visit the Forbidden City early in the morning, before the tour groups arrive, before the selfie sticks rise above the crowd like a forest of metal antennae, you will find something unexpected. Silence. The courtyards are vast. The stone is cool under your feet. The golden rooftops catch the first light and turn the color of honey. You can stand in the center of the outer court and turn slowly in a circle. To the south, the Meridian Gate. 38 meters of red wall and yellow tile. To the north, the Gate of Supreme Harmony, leading deeper into the complex. To the east and west, identical pavilions in perfect symmetry. Everything is balanced. Everything is intentional. Everything is designed to make you feel small, and it works. (8,886 rooms, 720,000 square meters, 600 years, over 1 million workers. Built without engines, without cranes, without computers, with wood from jungles 1,500 kilometers to the south. With stone hauled on ice from quarries 70 kilometers to the north, with bricks that took longer to fire than most modern buildings take to construct. Held together without nails, designed to dance with earthquakes, drained by 1,142 stone dragons. Every color a law, every number a prayer, every room a chapter in a story that lasted 5 centuries. The Forbidden City is not just the largest palace in the world. It is an argument, made in wood, stone, and golden brick. That human beings can build something that outlasts every dynasty, every revolution, and every ideology that created it. And perhaps that is the deepest secret the Forbidden City keeps. Not the tragedies behind its golden doors, not the cosmic code embedded in its layout, but the simple fact that 1 million ordinary people, carpenters, stonemasons, brickmakers, laborers, built something that has endured for 600 years. Not because it was forbidden, because it was built to last, one room at a time. If this documentary has opened a door for you, there is more to explore. Our next film follows the trail of the emperor who started it all, not the Yongle emperor, but the man he modeled himself after, the first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, who built not a palace but an army, 8,000 soldiers, made of clay, buried underground for 2,000 years, waiting, the Terracotta Army. Subscribe so you do not miss it. And if you know someone who loves history, share this with them. The Forbidden City was built one room at a time. So is a community.